Good evening, witches, warlocks, sorcerers, adepts, friends, fans, family, and followers to Season 5, Episode 13 of the hit underground radio occult radio show known as Knights of the Nephilim, brought to you by Celestial Oddities Radio and the Coterie of Smirl Arcane Occult Order. As always, I will be your host and guide on this journey into magic and mysticism, darkness, and divination. I am Frater Crow, and it's a pleasure to have you listening in this evening. Whether you're listening live or streaming after the fact, we do ask that you click the like, share, follow, and subscribe buttons on whatever platform you're tuning in from. Helps move us up the podcast community rankings, allows more people to discover the show, keeps you in loop with new episodes as they air, and gives you unfiltered access to our past archives, whether it be this show, Knights of the Nephilim, based upon esoteric and occult doctrine, ritual magic, and theology, or it be one of our other shows like Caniculum Obscuritatis, teaching you how to build a practice from the ground up. Pair of Normal Guys podcast, deep diving into talks of supernatural and paranormal phenomena, or it be Last Call, unrelenting, unfiltered, unapologetic stories, and lastly, Uncovering the Underground, interviewing artists, models, comedians, and so forth. Celestial Oddities Radio brings you a slew of underground entertainment, something for absolutely everyone, so make sure you share it around. If you're someone that does enjoy the video or live component of podcasting, then you can check this show out on the Knights of the Nephilim Frater Crow Facebook pages, Knights of the Nephilim Frater Crow, Celestial Oddities Radio, and the Coterie of Smirl Facebook pages, where they will be housed for 30 days until then they are removed from Facebook as per their policy. But you can also check it on the Frater Crow Knights of the Nephilim YouTube page, where it will be housed permanently. And those are components that you can check out live and interact live, and we certainly encourage you to do so. We love you to be a part of the show. This is as much your show as it is ours, so feel free to jump in, ask questions, give your input, and talk with our guests this evening. Now, for those that might like to just listen to the audio side of it, don't need to listen to it live, don't need to see the video. Some people like to listen to it at the gym, on the drive to work, at work, and so forth. After these episodes air each week, we do upload them to Spotify, Amazon, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, you name it, we're on it. So listen where you like the most, and we certainly would appreciate it. It's hard to believe it's episode 13 already of season 5, but here we are nonetheless. We've had 12 phenomenal episodes, 12 phenomenal guests. And as I always say, tonight will be no different. So if you missed any of those past episodes, make sure you check them out, give them a like and share. We really appreciate it. And we'll go ahead and jump into it. Tonight, we open the gates to a very different kind of knowledge. A knowledge that unites the physical body, the subtle body, and the luminous field of consciousness. With us is Dr. Christie Smirl, spiritually known as Kalavati Devi, a Doctor of Ayurvedic Medicine, Master of Science, nurse practitioner with over 3 decades of acute care experience, professor of yoga, teacher of Tantra for self-realization, Reiki Master and Trainer, and founder of Healthier Vibrations Institute. Dr. Smirl walks a rare bridge between the empirical and the mystical. She has treated the wounded body and the trauma centers of the modern world, and she has guided souls through the Tantric, Yogic, and Shamanic sciences that realign the deeper architecture of human consciousness. Tonight, we explore Ayurveda, Tantra, and the subtle energetic anatomy, the psychology of healing, and the ancient technologies of self-transformation. This is not merely a conversation about wellness. This is a transmission on reclaiming the full spectrum of the self. So prepare yourselves. This will be a journey into the medicine of consciousness. So light your candles, put on your ceremonial attire, grab your athames, and focus your desire as we call forward Dr. Christie Smirl. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you this evening?
I'm doing very well. How about you?
Very, very good.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. I'm very excited for this episode, have been waiting, so thank you for your patience to get to this point. We're rounding the last bend of our, I think, last 4 shows of the season, so thank you so much for making time for us this evening.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, we will waste no time, folks. We'll jump right into it. And Dr. Smirl, I would like to, ask as my first question, what do most Westerners fundamentally misunderstand about Ayurveda and its purpose beyond just mere physical health?
one thing that always stands out to me in terms of Ayurveda is when we branch out into that self-realization, moving into the anti-material world, we often hear people say, if the person is unable to control the mind and unable to bridge the true soul consciousness, send them to Ayurveda because there is a dosha or a guna that is out of balance. So, we go beyond the physical health of, oh, I'm healthy in the tissues, in the shrotas and the channels, but even more so, Ayurveda gives us a very important footwork for, is the consciousness integrated with the actual soul? Are the mind channels strong enough, clear enough, and capable of interfacing with the soul and our true dharma and our true will? So, we go beyond just the treatment of disease or the treatment of imbalance of the physical self and discover that it can be utilized in the science of self-realization.
And that really goes well with number two, because the next question I had was exactly that Ayurveda teaches that disease begins in consciousness before the body. And how does this manifest in real clinical settings for you?
They say in Ayurveda that, as you were saying, the disease process begins where we are cut off from or sustaining some sort of imbalance in the spirit body. That trickles down into the mental body, and that trickles down into the physical body. So let's say we have somebody who is physically ill, and you give them all of the physical remedies, herbs, yogasana, poses, pranayama, body treatments, perhaps, patrapinda swedana, something along those lines, and change their lifestyle, change their nutrition, but the mind is still sometimes resisting. Why is the mind resisting? Sometimes it's a lack of being able to interface the mind with the true self due to, vrittis, disturbances, desires, aversions. Those are usually the biggest problems. But what's happening is the interfacing or the integration between the soul with the mind, with the physical body. So in Ayurveda and in yoga, there's 5 essential sheaths: the Annamaya kosha, gross physical body. Some people think that that's where disease starts. That's where disease takes its final manifestation. The second layer, we have the pranamaya kosha, so the breath body. How am I breathing? Am I even conscious of my breathing? Am I breathing like a hypervigilant nervous Nelly from 30 years ago and still are not aware of it? And then we have the manomaya kosha, the mind sheath. And a lot of different alterations can happen at the mind sheath. But then beyond that is the vijnanamaya kosha, the soul's intelligence sheath. So when we have a trickle down problem from that sheath, then we may not be able to treat imbalances on the physical, pranic, or mental body level.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Is the further back or further deeper in it is, it's not going to be able to be reached easily. And I think you said it, that there's so many problems that start on the mental level that, is a breeding ground for so much that we experience in the physical. People have a lot of ailments that they don't understand why, and it's because of the way you think about yourself, you think about the world, you think about others around you. It can plant a lot of seeds that aren't very good for you. And then, as you mentioned as well, one thing that I think most people, unless you are a practitioner, how often do you think about the way you breathe? Most never think about breathing, right? It's just, I just do it, right? No, you don't. You are doing it. You're just not doing it correctly. And there's a whole different type of world out there if you start to learn to breathe properly. And it's just unfortunate that it's not something taught, unless you are in the occult sciences or into esotericism. You don't really you don't hear about it. It's something I feel that should be taught in schools. It should be taught growing up, that everyone should learn how to live a healthier life. But I don't think that that's part of the agenda, so to speak.
I absolutely agree about that. It's interesting. You'll meet somebody, or maybe they'll come and be a client, or just talking to a friend, and you'll see them and you'll observe them, and they'll have a certain breath pattern. Oh, and you'll say like, "Are you mad about something?" And they're like, "Oh no, I'm fine." And you'll say, "It's interesting because you breathe like you're angry." Or they'll have the classic Eeyore breathing. Oh,
Yeah.
oh. And you'll say, "Are you sad?" And they'll say, "Oh no, everything's fine." And I'll say, "It's interesting because I often observe people's breathing, because I observe mine most of the time." And I'll say, "You breathe like you're sad." And they'll say, "Oh no, I'm not sad at all." And I'll say, "Your breath is telling your brain stem that you are."
They just don't even realize it.
Your breath is also influencing your auric field to make it appear as if you are sad. So, when I teach pranayama, particularly in yoga teacher training or at the university, I instruct people that the way you breathe tells your brain stem, hence your entire nervous system, what page you're on. So if something happened, let's say 2 hours ago, and you're, "Oh my gosh, somebody almost cut me off in traffic," and you're breathing like you were nervous for a moment, but then your mind stays attached to it, and then you're home 2 hours later, and then you're talking about it, and then this happened. The breath is still holding on to that same feedback pattern. And it's telling the brainstem there's still something wrong, because the brainstem really is not that intelligent to know the difference between real stress and perceived stress. And especially when we start working with, esoteric and occult matters, managing the breath is essential to being able to manage the mind. Because if the mind is wandering, because the breath is wandering, the entire operation is going to not work as ideally as it could have.
And I think that's why one of the first things I've ever taught anybody that's ever come to me for any type of advice with meditation or just in a practice is I say, obviously meditation's key for me to breach into deeper levels of consciousness, but so many people struggle with the monkey mind. And I say, well, the first thing you need to learn to do is to breathe. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm trying to meditate. I'm like, well, yeah, you got to learn how to breathe before you can meditate. And I say, start out small. Just start out with the fourfold breath. 4 in, hold for 4, 4 out, hold for 4. And they're like, oh, that's it? And I'm like, yeah, that's it. Just try it for a little while. I'm like, because at first, everything that makes you up is going to try to fight it. It's going to try to say, no, let's count the breaths. And I'm so focused on counting it that I can't go to the zone I want to. And then I can't keep the structure going. And no, just keep it going until it becomes so routine for you, you no longer have to cognizantly think about it. It's embedded into you. And then after that, you start to notice the monkey mind slips away. After that, you start to notice you're experiencing different levels of consciousness, different levels of beings out there. And, a lot of times people come back and say, that's extraordinary. I would have never gotten there if I wouldn't have learned how to breathe. And exactly, breathing is key.
Yeah. I often use an analogy that learning how to manage your breath, not just manage it, but to be poignantly and cognitively aware of it at all times during certain processes, meditation, operations. It's like learning how to use your gas pedal and brake pedal and steering wheel in your car. If the breath is not managed and under the cognitive control, then we're not necessarily in control of whether we're feeling rajasic in nature in the mind, tamasic in nature in the mind, or whether or not we can start, stop, and proceed forward with the consciousness. Because as you said, the monkey mind just goes, squirrel. Oh.
Yep. It tries to pull us on track any chance it gets.
Always. The mind is like a naughty puppy. It just says, ooh, pick me, do this, do this. And it often, cause self-doubt and fear and misguided perception. But if the breath is controlled, most of that just fades away.
It does. And Ureli just left a comment here. It says, "Hi, everyone. Very interesting. I'm definitely going to stay mindful of my breathing patterns." And Ureli, you really need to, because you've heard me talk about on the show before mindfulness in general. Watch yourself outside of yourself and start to see why you act the way you do. You say the things you do. You get frustrated in moments that really weren't that big. Why you get over elated in moments that, they really weren't that amazing, but you're extremely elated. Why do you have the habits you have? And as you start to do it, it opens up a whole new doorway to you. And one of the biggest things, is Christie said, is really just focusing on your breath first, because that's a great way to start watching who you are. You're like, "Oh, I do weird things." As she mentioned earlier, how many times you hear people, and then you're like, same thing. You're like, "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." "Why?" It's like, you just let out a very aggravated sigh. "Oh, no, I'm fine." It's like, okay, yeah. Something's bothering you that you are now lying to me about. So whether you know it or you don't know it, if you do know it, you're lying to me. If you don't, then you got some things you need to work through. So I love that you mentioned staying so mindful, because you don't hear enough people talk about that.
And a lot of times we understand by studying our breath that we might be holding mental patterns that are from childhood even. Let's say somebody has a really traumatic background and they learned as a young child to be nervous and hypervigilant. And you'll usually observe them having a nervous type of breathing, short, shallow, holding their breath. And then once they start studying their breath, let's say every hour they do 1 minute of a pranayama, just 1 minute, they can start breaking down conditioned patterns of breathing that maybe they've done since they were 5 years old. And then their entire world shifts just because they changed that looping and feedback system, that trickle up and trickle down effect of the way we breathe, because it affects the entire nervous system.
And it really is a feedback loop, as you said, because it triggers something in us that makes you act and do a certain thing. And by you doing that, it triggers that. And it just is a nonstop loop. If you don't break that cycle, it becomes a true cycle. And a lot of times people don't realize it. Every time they see or experience a certain thing that they might not even realize on surface level they're doing it, and you watch someone and you're like, "Oh, yeah, there's something there that that needs dealt with."
Yeah. And the breath can determine whether or not you are emotionally trigger happy, triggerable, or steady and confident in how you feel. Let's say we have the hypervigilance situation. People who are generally unaware of their breathing, but they're still having a pattern that indicates some sort of nervous stress or hypervigilance. All it takes is a little tiny scratch, and their nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, is already on high alert because they're doing hypervigilant breathing, whether they know it or not. And then the slightest aggravation happens, and they fly off. They either get nervous or angry or jealous or confused. Whereas if they can break that type of breathing pattern by daily pranayama practices, I usually recommend that people do it 4 times a day. 10 minutes for 4 times a day. And they're like, 40 minutes of breath work a day? I go, you're the one that came and saw me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And 40 minutes of breath work eventually breaks down and turns into something that is just part of the way you live. Once they start practicing that, then the sympathetic nervous system turns itself off of high alert and draws us into the parasympathetic nervous system, where we can finally feel confident and grounded. Because when the sympathetic nervous system is on high alert, we're not grounded. We're right on the edge of fight, flight, whether it's a true perceived fear or some strange breathing pattern that started when we were 5 years old.
Yep. And I've talked about that before, how the smallest thing will set someone off, and they don't even understand why. Why are you flipping out right now over something that shouldn't even anger you, let alone cause you to have rage? And it's because of that. It's because of the fact that they haven't dealt with that yet. And if they can, and what's interesting is like you mentioned, people will come for help, right? And then you give them the recipe for help, and they're like, no, I don't want to do. But it's like if a doctor were to write you a prescription, you don't even question it. You go to the pharmacy, you get it, and you take it, right? Most of the world anymore. But you say, well, you don't need to take any type of pharmaceutical. Just 10 minutes 4 times a day. You have 10 minutes. Cut 10 minutes of your TV time. Cut 10 minutes of sleep. 10 minutes off of whatever else it is that you do. It's not hard to find 40 minutes. And I tell people that all the time with learning occult practices. They need to understand that it takes discipline, and discipline is not done weekends. It's done every single day, and every single day is not easy at first. How do I get 3 more hours? And I'm extreme in a lot of things. So I tell them, well, you need to dedicate several hours a day. And they're like, well, how can I do that? I'm like, well, how long do you sleep? Well, I get 7.5 hours. I'm like, well, why don't we cut that down to 6 and learn how to survive off of 6 steadily. Now you have an extra hour and a half right there. How long do you watch TV a day? Well, an hour and a half. Why don't we cut that down to like a half an hour and get your show in? You know what I mean? And there's so many ways that you can adjust your life for a healthy lifestyle. And once you're adjusted to it and experiencing it, you're not going to want to go back to the way you were living. But so many people are afraid to break, or just hesitant to break that chain of disease, so to speak, to get healthy, even though they are asking for help.
Discipline is key.
Discipline's key.
People who are not willing to have some level of discipline, I'll just say, I might not be able to help you.
Yep, that's it. It's you can find out pretty quick when someone comes to you for assistance or help, whether they're worth saving or not. I know that sounds horrible, folks, but there's been many a times I'm like, I'm sorry, man, you're on your own. Like, I can't help you.
And that's very true. Even in the Ayurvedic texts, ancient textbooks, the medical textbooks give certain criteria for what is a worthy patient. It's not like in the ER, you have to treat everybody on some level. You can't turn people away from the emergency department. But when it comes to matters of learning deeper sciences, especially occult sciences, or just Ayurveda as a client, the patient or client has to show certain criteria to even be considered a fit patient. And otherwise they say, let them go. It's a waste of your time. And that is creating a vampiric client.
That's actually going to be my next point. I'm glad you said that, is whenever you have that, it becomes this form of astral vampirism that they're just going to keep draining from you. I need. Well, you're not doing anything I'm telling you need to do. And then they become clingy and attach themselves to you, and they're pulling energy from you. And, you know, as any, obviously, you know this very well, as any therapist or anyone helping clients, if you don't learn to cut off those astral vampires, you'll start to become sick. You'll start to become very tired and lethargic. And then next thing you know, you can't perform in any one of the tasks you're doing to proficiency. And it's not you, which makes you think it's you. What am I doing? No, it's your clients that you shouldn't have as clients. Out of every 5 that come, only a couple can be saved. Some just have to be cast to the side.
And we do them even more of an injustice by continuing a non-therapeutic relationship like that. I would much rather be the person that has to say, you don't have enough discipline to progress. Our time is over.
Yeah. No, and I see. And there's a comment coming in right now from Natasha, we share a show together and do a lot of different projects together. She is a therapist as well, so she knows 100%. She's like, yeah, got to cut some. We got a lot of other comments coming in right now. I'll make sure I jump back, and then we'll jump into our other questions. Merrick said, "Oceans of love to you both. It's 2:22 a.m. here in the UK. Special number. Hope this is recorded so I can watch it at a more conductive time. Kali mantra on the wall behind Christie. Great. Ja Kali Ma." Yes, and we'll be talking about the Dark Mother here soon. So if you miss it, Merrick, you can always jump back and check out the recording. He put 40 minutes is nothing when we're all already breathing 24 hours a day. And that is true. Just do it right, and it'd make a huge difference, right? Natasha again says 100% on point. Merrick says, I'm thirsty. Go to the kitchen and pour yourself a glass of water. But I'm thirsty. Yeah, because people don't want to do what they need to do to better themselves. Last couple comments, and we'll jump into the next question. I recited 50 malas of mantras today. A few years ago, just 1 mala of mantras was such an imposition. And that is true, too. And that's why I stress to anybody that follows the inner or outer workings of our cult, here in Pennsylvania, that prayer is a huge one, and people start to get surprised at that because we do darker practices and they're like, prayer, absolutely, prayer is vital within our practices, and now I want you to do prayers to the point where you feel like your mind's going to explode. And people are like, I hate this. Good. And I want you to do 500 more. And they're like, but what? And I'm like, yeah, just keep doing it. And then you'll move through the hatred to more hatred, to then love. And you'll find that love in prayer, and you'll start to find how beautiful it is. And we'll talk about that with your Kali Hypnosis book, because the poetry is very reminiscent of prayers, and it's beautiful. And there's a sweetness to when you can use words in such a beautiful way to talk to your spirits and to work with those energies. And that really, folks, is why I push prayer so much, because it is a way to talk to the spirits you work with in a powerful, poetic, and beautiful way. And it's very resonant. But at first, it seems like an imposition. It's like, I hate this. Well, good. Push through the things you hate to find the things you love. Now, what other comments do we have here? Brian says, I live on 4 hours. Well, Brian, you're a beast. I can't do 4 hours. I can do 6. 4, I don't run properly, though I do know people that can do 4 or 5 hours a night every night, and they are fine on sleep. I can't do that. People don't want to get better. They want to be indulged. They want you to be their wet nurse, and 100% they do. So I said only a few out of every dozen can be saved, really. I said out of every 5, I was being generous. It's probably about like 1 or 2 out of 12. And then Natasha says, thanks, guys. This is very gratifying for me. Carolyn says, just listen. Greetings from Belgium. Thank you so much for tuning in. And then last one, and we'll jump into the comment or to another question. You must be so surprised that I spend most of my time with wrathful deities. Whoops. You know, if you do it right and you're paying them honor and respect, it really is a way to work with wrathful deities that are never really wrathful. It's all about that beauty and that honor and that pushing through those obstacles that we face. Now, Dr. Smirl, can you explain how the doshas relate not just to physiology, but to karma, behavior, spiritual evolution?
Well, the doshas in Ayurveda, for those of you who might not know the doshas yet, there's 3 main doshas in Ayurveda. Vata, made of space and air. Pitta, composed of Pitta composed of fire and water elements, and then Kapha composed of earth and water elements. And each of us have our own unique constitution that determines our Prakriti. But more importantly, we have certain doshas in our physical makeup that also reflect our mental makeup. So in the physical body, we have doshas, Vata, Pitta, Kapha. In the brain and our mental constitution, they translate slightly differently to the gunas, either rajasic, tamasic, or sattvic. And each person has a specific mental makeup that ideally can be cultivated and improved. So, for instance, some people are naturally born more tamasic. Sometimes I lecture on this. What's the difference between a mental disorder, personality disorder, or is that actually their true nature?
Good point.
Not an imbalance or a disorder. So, for instance, some people, if they're more tamasic in guna of the mind, they might be lazy, dirty, indulgent, and violent. You know, a lot of times we're like, oh, that's a character defect. Or is it? Is that their actual true nature? So in Ayurveda, it helps to know what's my physical dosha, how does that affect, and is that directly correlated to my mental qualities? And then how can I work to evolve that? So when we talk about spiritual evolution, I often differentiate. We have the soul, right? The soul is always perfect and pure. The soul cannot be diseased. However, the spirit body and the mental channels is where we carry disease. So our doshas, let's say I am a predominantly a kapha type, or let's say pitta, because I'm mostly pitta in mental and physical qualities. So if I'm a pitta dosha dominant person, if I become pitta imbalanced, let's say my pitta goes up too high, then I'm going to be prone to things like hot, sweaty, stinky, burning stomach, burning bowels, burning mouth, burning ulcers in the skin, rashes, irritations. But mentally, that goes up into the mind channels and causes grouchiness, crankiness, competitiveness, violence, aggression, criticalness, harshness, backbiting. Now, is this something that is due to diet and lifestyle? It's just gotten out of balance? Or are they actually a Rajasic mental type by birth? And are they just naturally more prone to this? So when we start looking at spiritual evolution or moving towards self-realization, the soul, the pure self, which is free of all of that gobbledygook. When we start looking at that, Ayurveda in particular, along with yogic self-control techniques and discipline, gives us a nice guideline for, oh, this is my baseline. These are my natural constitutional qualities, but they don't necessarily serve me. And they're not true to my soul, myself. So if they're not true to my soul and myself, they're Maya, or they're karmic entanglements, some sort of delusion, some sort of mental entrapment, some sort of emotional, societal conditioning, and, as they would say in a lot of the text, ignorance. That's not calling anybody ignorant to degrade them, but it's a form of ignorance. So when we look at yoga, particularly from the Ayurvedic standpoint in creating purification, then we can say, this is your baseline. This is where you might want to aim to go, unless you're happy with your interesting constitution that you were born with. Some people just aren't interested in changing. They're like, this is how I am. This is how I'm always going to be. And don't try to change me. Fine. I'll go spend my time doing something else. Those are not the people we want to try to reach out and help in the science of Ayurveda or even Tantra. So it's all about creating the perfected being, the perfected mind, the perfected consciousness, so that we can come as close to soul self-realization as possible. And all of those disturbances of the mind, disorders of the mind, the mood, those are in Ayurveda just considered disease. And they might be karmic. We might have been born that way, and that's fine too. We all have a savings account that has different things in it.
That's beautiful, though. I mean, I'm Rajasic by nature, and I've been able to, as you said, there are pieces of that are Maya. They are illusion. They are something that we can take stock of the good aspects of that. And okay, I'm going to absorb them, but then wait a second. These things are aspects that I'm prone to, maybe more than another individual, but doesn't mean that I am slave to them. It just means that I have to adapt and change life a little differently so that those aren't aspects that come out so easily. And when you do that, life changes, and you can take the good and eliminate the bad. And that is a very important thing. Is to notice so many questions today. Oh, that's the way that you allow yourself to come because of your birth tendency, sure. But you should be able to change that. We're all adapting. How does one identify their true ability versus the conditioned personality created by modern Western culture? And I think we kind of touched on that a little bit.
Can you repeat that again? You're breaking up just a little bit on my end.
Can you hear me a little bit better now?
Yes.
Perfect. How does one, and this kind of goes along with our last point, but I wanted to breach off that just a little bit. How does one identify their true Prakriti versus the conditioned personality created by modern stress and our culture?
It's actually very simple. I just recently wrote a very basic guidebook and workbook for Ayurveda. I wrote it mostly for like the students who are studying, but you can just go down a checkoff list, literally. So the physical Prakriti and the mental Prakriti are very. Is my audio okay?
I think mine is.
I don't
It looks
hear
like
any
she was
smarty
saying.
pants.
Looks like she was saying mine was cutting in and out. So hopefully everyone can hear me good. I think you're clear. I'm
I
not
hear
sure why mine is. I haven't moved.
I hear you real good now. Okay, so um, it's just a matter of knowing how to go down the checkoff list. So let's say, for instance, where's my book? I don't have it. Anyways, it doesn't matter. So when we look at somebody and we're evaluating their prakriti, we look at all sorts of things. What kind of hair do they have? What kind of eyebrows do they have? What kind of eye set do they have? What kind of eye color? What kind of nose? What kind of mouth? What kind of teeth? What kind of tongue do they have? What kind of shoulder width and depth do they have? What kind of bony joints do they have? What kind of knees do they have? So we go down all of that, and then we ask for the prakriti. What kind of digestion do they have? We ask things like, what kind of sleep do you typically have? Not what's out of balance, but what they normally have. What kind of mental responses to pleasure, to pain, to stress do they have? Sometimes it can be difficult to determine what's their current imbalance versus what were they like in the younger years of their life, and were they even balanced in their younger years of life. So we go down this whole checkoff list of physical qualities, mental qualities, digestive qualities, even things like what's their sex drive, what's their appetite like, what type of weather do they prefer, what kind of climate do they prefer, what kind of sleep patterns do they have. So if you have somebody who's good at it, you can determine the prakriti very easily. Sometimes they just walk into the room and you're like, man, that's a pitta kapha prakriti for sure. But we never want to assume. It's best to go down all the questions, lift up the pant legs, look at their knees, look at their ankles, and ask some basic things. And then the vikruti is determining what dosha's out of balance. Is pitta high? Is kapha high? Is vata high? And being able to determine how far away from their baseline prakriti constitution have they grown away from. So we start asking questions like, is your skin dry? Is your digestion dry? Are you constipated? Are you flighty, anxious, nervous with insomnia? I'd be like, check, check, check. Vata is aggravated. Or I would ask questions like, are you hot and sweaty and stinky and cranky, hangry, thirsty? And then I would say, sounds like pitta's aggravated. Or I'll ask questions like, are you mucousy and congested and tired and slow and depressed and heavy? Kapha's aggravated. So once you have those basic checkoff lists, it's pretty quick and easy to figure out what's out of balance.
And I love the fact that everything we've talked about tonight, guys, Dr. Smirl has in her upcoming book. I mean, it covers, what a beautiful book. It just covers so much from your imbalances and how you can notice that, how it comes through you as a person, how that shows itself. But the book, and I wanted to jump into to make sure we have ample time to talk about it, because there's so many things I want to talk to you about this evening, but I think the book has to take center stage at this point, is you have a book on kalinosis. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how this book came to be, your devotion to the Dark Mother, and how that practice started for you and this book came about?
That's a big topic.
Absolutely.
Jema. So Kali Ma, the Dark Mother, is my Ishta Devata. Ishta Devata is my main source of devotion and my main vein of study. And Kali Ma has been coming to me for a long time. As a very, very, very small child, about the age of 4, I began seeing her, not in dream, but as an actual apparition. And it was quite terrifying because she came in her wrathful form every time. And of course, I was born in Pomona, California. Nobody around me knew what I was seeing or what I was experiencing. And it was a long time later, in my 30s, before anybody ever said, "Do you know who Kali Ma is?" And I was like, her, my goodness.
Yeah.
This is the goddess, the fearful, wrathful goddess that I've seen all of my life. And I always thought that, I often associated as a child that it was something devastating was going to happen. Something bad was going to happen. Many times when she would manifest as an apparition, I would run out of my room screaming down the hallway. I was living at my grandparents' at the time. There was a lot of occult activity there also. So she appeared even more. And I'd run down the hallway and I would scream, "You're all going to die!" And I was convinced, because it was very, very real. Well, after a while, it was so chaos producing that they took me to a priest who's a priestess at a metaphysical church in Pasadena, California. And she believed me. And she said, you're seeing a form of a spirit or a god or a divinity, something. She didn't understand what I was seeing. So she taught me about my subtle body. And then things started to become more manageable. Anyways, when I started studying yoga and Ayurveda, sure enough, I was introduced to her formally. So I started studying on my own. And then a long time went by, and I decided I wanted to be taught through a formal lineage. When I first met my Guru Ma in India, the first thing she said to me, "Kali Ma, Kali Ma." And I was like, yes, Te Ma. But she doesn't speak English. And so there wasn't the opportunity for direct teaching on a very high academic level.
Yeah.
So eventually I ended up seeking a tantric guru who was able to walk me through very formal praxis. We still meet. We've been meeting for years now. Every single month I get new lessons, new nuances of praxis, and sadhanas to the mother. So when I started this, at first I went into deep, deep meditation I was studying the Dasha Mahavidyas at that time, which are the 10 wisdom goddesses of Kali Ma. And just the artwork never stopped. Just drawing after drawing. I'd go into deep meditation, and then before I knew it, I had drawings scrawled all over the floor, poetry scrawled all over the floor, writings everywhere, all over the place. It was a bit uncontrollable. And so I started putting these together in little collections, and then several of my friends would say, "Why don't you put something together and share it with other people?" And I thought, I don't know that anybody wants to see all of this wild nonsense that's come out of me. And they said, "No, please share it." And so I did my first little book, and I hand stitched it, and I just put maybe 15 prints or so. And then time went on, and I kept doing more deeper sadhana, and more started coming out, just drawing after drawing, poetry after poetry. And so eventually I compiled them into a larger book called Mother Gnosis. That one was full of a lot of, as they would say, racy images, but I don't question how the images come out. I just draw them. My goal always is to tell the mother, make me a pure vessel, make my hands your hands, make my mind your mind, and guide me. So some of the imagery, some of the writings are, I don't know, they got me one of those parental discretions on my publishing company. So I took it off of one platform, and then I just never republished it. And then over the years, I ended up publishing the Dashamahavidya book, or the Gitas, the songs to the Dark Mother. And I had them published through Zazen Sounds, and those sold out like within a day. And I just never republished it. So I finally have taken all of my, I should say, a small portion of all of my channeled drawings, meditative writings, invocations, praxis, and put them into one collection. And I'll be publishing that soon.
And I am truly thankful that you allowed me a sneak peek before it is publicly published. It is a beautiful book, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, as Dr. Smirl says, there's so many drawings, and I know that that's only a fragment of what you truly have, but there's so many drawings in this book. They're gorgeous. They are beautiful. And as you mentioned, who are we to question how a deity or an entity or a god or goddess comes through to us? I have seen different spirits that I've worked with come through in very beautiful forms, but I've also seen those same spirits come through in absolutely terrifying forms, and not necessarily in a way that they're angry, just for whatever reason, as you said, that sometimes they show that form to you, and you have that ability, and I unfortunately do not, but I love that you do, to be able to take that onto paper and draw it. I've never as artistic in that manner. I'm artistic in many other ways, but your drawings express so much love and, as you said, devotion, and truly is a channel of her energies and of her source. And it's like, as I'm reading through the book and looking at these pictures and reading this beautiful poetry and incantations or invocations of her, I'm like, wow, like there's so much, as you said, there's so much, I don't even know what the word I'm looking for. There's just so much connection there. You can feel it within the writings. And then there's so many pieces that you talk about the importance of how you shape your mouth when doing the mantra, the mantras, the yantras, the mudra, everything. And it covers so much, guys. When this drops, I encourage everyone listening this evening that if these topics interest you, this is a book that you should certainly have in your library. It is beautiful. You will love it. You will learn a lot. And obviously, it would support a wonderful guest. So please be looking for that. When is, and you might not have an official date yet, but when do we expect this to drop?
Well, it depends on how it comes out first. Right now, I'm working with Sirius Esoterica to perhaps publish through them. I've already sent a draft, and we're working on a few different things there. And then eventually I will self-publish it as well in full color through my own publishing company.
Awesome.
So directly through me. Because a lot of times what has stopped me in the past for reprinting is I really want everything in full color. There's so much color. The red, when it's just in black and white, yes, it's good.
It misses something.
Said, if the mother herself had me do it in these vibrancies of colors, that's how I want to see it, because that's part of the transmission for me.
And I can really relate to that, because one of the things that stood out to me is the color. I'm looking at and it peaks. You can feel it. You know, like, okay, there's some vibrancy here. So I could completely understand needing to have it in color is a very important aspect of it. One of the things that you wrote about in this book that I heavily related to, I absolutely love, was the child, the student, and the lover. I think that understanding, and if you wouldn't mind explaining that, I think that's a very important thing for folks to understand, the different levels of one's praxis and practice as the years develop and as the depth develops. Some might never leave the child stage. That's not bad. It's just there are ways to reach those deeper levels. Would you mind explaining that to our listeners?
Absolutely. So I say that no matter what Ishtadevata, deity, god that you're working with, that it's really wise to maybe consider, how do I work? We'll just talk about Kali Ma, but how do I work with Kali Ma as a child, as an infant, as a toddler, as an adolescent? How do I work with Kali Ma as a student, as a preschooler, a kindergartner, a fifth grader, an advanced university student? And do I work with Kali Ma as a friend or as a lover? So, if I may indulge, when we work with Kali Ma as a child, these are some of the writings that came through many years ago. Come to me as a child and rest within my womb. Gaze into your mother's eyes, beguiled and full of swoon. Come to me as child, nestled in my bloom, and offer up your heart and mind, sweet-faced child like the moon. Spontaneous, impetuous, innocent towards me. Unconditioned adoration, arms open in glee. Sing in my pastures, play in my streams, draw in my sea sands and dance in your dreams. Eat from my orchards and giggle with the bees. Explore this world, my children. Come into me. Come to me in ignorance, and I'll feed you with a spoon. Medicine of difference, encase you in a cocoon. Come to me in temperament, ruthless, full of greed. I'll strip you of infatuations till you tumble to the ground, crawling like a newborn child, mindless to be found. Come to me in desperation, crawling on your knees, tangled in your own gestation, a mother I'll show thee. So when we come to the mother as a child, we ask, A, do I trust the mother like an innocent infant? Do I come to the mother, Kali Ma herself, for my essentials, my basics, my security, my safety, my shelter, my comfort, my trust in the universe? Have I even established that in this world yet? Do I have mommy issues already? And do I have to resolve those before I can have a healthy relationship with Kali Ma? Because Kali Ma, I often say, whatever you bring, whatever trash you bring to the table, she throws it right back in your face. But when we come to Kali Ma as a child, an innocent child, Jema, 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 show me love, show me comfort. They often say that her earrings, she has little children playing in her earrings and playing in her hair. And she always treats us with such gentle delicacy when we come to her that way. But if we come to Kali Ma with some attitude problem, what happens? Whoosh, straight down, because she can be extremely ruthless. Part of approaching Kali Ma as a child is learning your basics, learning your P's and Q's. So one of my earliest lessons, and it kind of bridges child, student, right? What's the first thing we learn in preschool? We learn how to finger paint. We learn how to draw outside or maybe inside the lines. We learn how to sing songs. So when we come to Kali Ma, we want to be willing to sing like a child with innocence, not like, well, I don't want to be heard sing that stupid song like that, We want to be able to draw a picture, even if it looks like stick figure goop, because the mother isn't going to say, what's this piece of shit? The mother's going to say, oh, you drew for me? Oh, how sweet. To pick a little tiny daisy from the front yard and put it on the altar and say, Ma, I brought this for you. Rather than like, is this the formal number of red hibiscuses and 5-petaled flowers that you require? It's so much more formal.
Yeah.
So we have a lot more leeway when we approach the mother as a child. But one of our early lessons is our alphabet. In kindergarten, most children know their alphabet. I didn't. When I started kindergarten, all the kids were looking up at the ceiling. I was like, what is this song they're singing? It was their ABCs. But one of the earliest things that I learned in devotion to the mother was the Sanskrit alphabet, the Varnamala. her 50 skulls. And when we learn the alphabet, we go through a very fundamental purification process, because each skull on her skull necklace represents one of the Sanskrit letters that lay out into the 50 petals of the first through six primary chakras in the body. So when we go through the alphabet, a, e, u, rum, etc., we're going through what might sound like you're just reciting the alphabet day after day after day, but it's a purification process.
Absolutely.
Then when we go to the mother and we switch to more of a student role, what are we learning? Why are you in school? What are you enrolled for? Are you willing to learn? There's nothing worse than having a know-it-all student. Nobody wants that. To truly learn from the mother, we have to go with an open mind, an open heart, and say, please teach me. Teach me what it is that I need to know to fulfill my highest will here and now on earth, rather than, 100 lifetimes from now. So it requires a bit of deconditioning of the mind, because once we start working with Kali Ma, sometimes there are radical mental changes to the point where some people start losing grip on reality, because she's swift, she's fast, she has her knife, she has a scythe, she's got her trident, she's got her discus, she's got, all of these implements that cause sometimes change that is so fast, people have a hard time recalibrating. So it's important, in my opinion, when we approach the mother as a student, that we also have a living teacher, or at least some sort of living tradition, so that we're not just going at it in a chaotic manner. If I may indulge, when we go to the mother, come to me as a student. Study means and ways. Conjure forth my mysteries, reciting night and day. Come to me as a student, ego set aside. Invoke me, oh so prudent, calling me inside. Intone me with my mantras, pranic yoking tantras. Come to me as a pupil. Surrender all your scruple. Memorize my alphabet. Garland with a boon. Open mind and sadhana, and wisdom I'll attune. Light forth all my Agni. Purify through me. Call forth my Shakti, and I will inhabit thee. Come to me in insolence, I'll cut you to the bone. Bleed out all impurities until you're dry sandstone. Come to me in detestation, and I'll drop you to your knees. I'll school you through earth's creations till you follow my decree. Crawling out of obstinance, a teacher I'll show thee. So even when we go to the mother as a student, we want to be wise. We want to just say, teach me and show me. I open up my mind. Like, that's the first thing that we do when we approach the altar. We kneel down in full prostration and we put our head on the ground. The head, the ego, is the most important thing that we can offer Kali Ma. And we say, free me from egoic disturbances, because ego isn't a bad word. But a lot of things that comes with the ego sometimes block us from actually becoming our greatest self, our highest incarnation. So student is our second role. And then lover. First, we have to ask ourselves, are we comfortable being a consort to Kali Ma? Are we comfortable with our own sexuality, our own sensuality? Are we comfortable saying, I am a lover of the divine. I love the divine. And we have to look at if we have any lover hiccups within our own mind, shame, guilt, fear, and different emotions that we might have picked up along the way. And when we approach the divine or Kali Ma as a lover, I've said this in other interviews before. Let's say you meet a new lover for the first time. What do we usually do? Hey, what kind of food do you like to eat? What days of the week are best for you? Do you like to hang out in the nighttime or in the daytime? What do you like flowers? What are your favorite flowers? Are you allergic to anything? Of course, Kali Ma is not allergic to anything. And we learn what their preferences are so that when we go into formal ritual, we maybe, let's say you have a new lover and you bring that person, let's say it's a lady, and you bring poppies. And they're like, I hate poppies. I'm allergic to them. Whereas if you already know that they love daffodils and you bring them daffodils, you're already in the door a little bit higher, right? So when we learn what Kali Ma's preferences are as a student, it makes that passionate courting at a different level. When we look at being a lover, if I may, come to me as a lover. Offer me perfumes. Poetize your love for me. Record it with a plume. Come to me as lover, gazing longingly, blissful and surrenders, evoking fineries. Come to me in Leela, submerge in all my essences. Make love. Savor all the honey, embrace in her seduce. Join her in the Leela and drown in beauty and juice. Open up your heart and ashes she'll reduce. But come to her in ignorance, she'll toss you to the wolves, tear apart your faculties, lost howling with the fools. Come to her in desolation, anguished and alone. She'll smother you in ecstasy, kneeling at her throne. Fallen onto bended knees, a priestess you'll be shown. So it just all depends on where we're at, what we need, what's our goal in working with Kali Ma. The first thing we're not supposed to do is just be like, hey lady, I want something. That's really rude. And to learn some basics. I've said this many times on other programs. Some people will say, I started working with Kali Ma and everything went haywire. I had nothing but difficulty after that. And I'll say, first thing you need to know is you should be coming to her son, Ganesha, first. Always go to Ganesha to open up the gateway, because when we understand some of the fundamental esoterics about Ganesha, Ganesha is the anchoring rod, the root, the stabilization at the Muladhara chakra or Kundalini. Kali Ma herself is coiled. And if we're not grounded when the Kundalini rises, then everything goes out of whack and haywire. So when we understand that Ganesha is the first to open up the gates to Kali Ma, to give us permission first, because there's a lot of different stories about why Ganesha was placed by Kali Ma or Parvati herself to guard the doors to her mysteries. And there's a whole level of physics that are applied to that. Because if we get that Kundalini at the wrong timing, at the wrong rate, for the wrong reasons, I often say this, we're like Schmeagol with the ring.
Yeah, it can be devastating.
We get a little kooky. Or, like you said, devastating, and some people never recover from it.
That's right. You can't open it too fast and you can't open it improperly. It has to be channeled and done very strategically over a period of time. And I think that's why, the child, student, and lover is so important, because, folks, you don't have to necessarily be all three, but a very proper fluid practice should not be an upward progression where most people would think that you necessarily go from child to lover, or excuse me, child to student to lover, if done properly, you remain all three. As a lover, you are still a child in her eyes. You still see the beauty in things. You still rejoice in front of her and sing and dance as you once did as a small child. As a student, and I love how you said that, because there's so many similarities between your practice and mine of how I approach my deities, especially with my Kimbanda. Rhonda left a comment here, who folks will be our guest actually next episode. And Rhonda's involved in several different ATR practices, and she's involved in Ifa and Kimbanda and so forth. And I know within my Kimbanda that I bow my head. And as Rhonda says, the head to the ground is the greatest sign of putting an ego into a submission. And I do it 3 times, and I do it for 3 different levels. I do it for Nzambi as the ultimate divine. I do it for the Mayorel, the one who governs over the practices. And then I do it to my Eshus and Popagiras and bow to them, showing my respect and love and awe. And as I always say, remove what does not belong and open the gates for what does. As you said, ego's not bad if used properly. Don't destroy it, as a lot of people say, but also don't let it be a hindrance, and let them know, I am here to learn. Teach me what can be taught. Let me see the inevitable, but teach me what can be taught. And if you do that and you approach it as a student, as a child, and certainly as a lover, that devotion, how can I cater to you? How can I pamper to you? What, as you said, what foods do you like? What flowers should I have in my temple? And I think that the problem that most people face is that they think that everything has to be this big to do. As you said, you're out in your yard, you see a small flower growing, and you know that your entity or your deity would like that. Pick it, walk in, put it down. Or as simple as is with my Kimbanda, I might not have time for a ritual this evening, but to go over and light a couple candles, pour a little bit of the rum for my spirit, to sit down for 5 minutes in solitude and quiet, and just share that moment with them, and then blow out the candles and thank you, go to bed. That's all it requires, guys. It's just like the 40 minutes a day of focusing on your breathing. It seems like it's such a hurdle for you, 40. But as Merrick said, you breathe all day. What's the difference of just doing it right? After a couple weeks, you won't even notice it, but you're doing it right from that point forward. Let's jump into some of these comments here, so we don't miss you guys out there. Brian said, my path actually started with Kali, then Durga in 2000. I appreciate your knowledge, and after all these years, I am still a Shakta at heart. And let me skip one. I'll come back to that. This other one in a second. We got beautiful words. That was beautiful. All talking about your beautiful poetry of the 3 levels. Rebecca said hello there.
Hey, Droovy Mom.
We have a comment here that says, Frater, thank you so much for featuring this beautiful soul tonight. Such a blessing. Thank you, Christy. Have a wonderful evening. I must leave now. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. You can catch the second chunk of this or whatever's remaining on a playback, so please do. And we are thrilled to have Dr. Smirl here tonight. So, and I have to agree with her. You are just an absolutely lovely soul. I mean, I don't say that too often about my guests. I love my guests, absolutely, but you certainly have a aura and a certain radiance about you that is quite profound.
Thank you.
So let's go ahead here. And there's another comment. I didn't read it, so I'm going to read it with you here. I was trying to read them, throw them up. This one I didn't get to catch. There was 2 parts to it. Got that here. They always throw my boyfriend's cell phone on the floor and have a closed where 2 nails stick out of one side, was also 2-sided. I'm not sure where we're going with this one. I am not 100% sure. If you have something throwing your cell phone and smashing things, you're obviously either angering a spirit and doing something wrong that you need to try to find a mitigation of that, or you're working with spirits that you probably shouldn't be working with. And I don't mean that any rudeness. But one of the important things I think that can be understood through approaching it, as Christy said, is that we often want to go in and ask for something right off the bat. In demonology or diabolism, I tell people all the time, that's one of the worst things you can do. You're working with very volatile spirits, and you're going and you're like, I'm going to call you forward, and then it actually shows up, and you're like, holy shit, it worked. I want you to go do this for me. And it's like, why are you, what are you calling me for? And you have no power right now. You were surprised I even actually showed up, and now you're commanding me to go do things. It doesn't work like that. I think, as I mentioned to Merrick earlier, he said about working mainly with wrathful deities. And I said, and I made the statement that if done properly, most of those wrathful deities will never be wrathful to you in your life. And the reason I said that, listeners, is that exact thing that Christie talked about, approaching those spirits with reverence and respect, approaching them with awe and exuberance as a child. And I am so enamored to be in your presence. Thank you for coming and allowing me to conversate with you. I always use this terminology right here. Please allow me to connect, convene, converse, and commune with you, to build the bridge of alliance between one another. As I rise, you rise. As you rise, I rise. Let's work and build together. Thank you for your presence. And I continue to work. And as you do that, folks, those spirits very rarely are going to cause a lot of strife in your life, because they see the respect if you truly have the respect. And as you build that relationship without asking for anything, here are offerings, here are flowers, here's food, here's wine, here is libation. And then over time, okay, I've established how much I'm happy to be in your presence. Now, please teach me whatever you feel that I am ready to be taught. Not teach me everything I want to know. Teach me what you feel I am ready for, and clear away any biases or negativity that I hold that would stop me from absorbing and accepting these wonderful lessons. And over time, you learn more and more. And then eventually, how can I better serve you? How can I be a better partner for you? How can I show you love in the way that you need love, and in return, receive that love? And you go through those stages, yet keep all three of them. And when you do that, it changes your practice forever. It changes your connection. It changes how your life shapes. The synchronicities that'll start happening in your life are profound. But as Dr. Smirl said, don't ever think that that doesn't mean you're going to get the shit shaken out of you, because sometimes, and I spoke about this many times, you want your life to change without changing your life. And very rarely does that ever come to fruition in that way. It's, you want your life to change, we're going to change it. Congratulations, you just lost your job. Congratulations, your best friend or partner, part of your family just passed away. Congratulations, you just lost your lover or partner of 20 years or whatever it might be. You're left struck down. You're left feeling defeated. You are at rock bottom. But why is that so profound? Because rock bottom is the best place to build a brand new foundation. And from there, you have solid ground. And it sometimes is hard to see the forest from the trees. But when you take a step back and you say, oh, wow, it was a brutal thing that happened. But without those massive changes, I would still be stuck in the rut I was in for the last 15 years. But now 3 years forward, I'm able to look in hindsight and see how my life is unfolded like a lotus and how beautiful it is. And it would have never happened without just being shaken a little bit. Sometimes those shakes are how we learn.
Very well said.
Now, let's see, is there other comments coming in here? I don't think there is. Kalima handed my ass to me on more than one occasion. She is known to do that, and for good reason. And, oh, so Caroline said, want it gone. So whatever it is that's afflicting you, want it gone. I would say a thorough cleansing. And I mean thorough. Please don't be one of these people just light sage and walk around the room and wave sage. If you want to get something out of your house that's very, very volatile, you need to go hardcore. We're talking floor washes, wall washes. We're talking every aspect. You're doing fumigations, floor washes, spiritual baths, and everything in between to really alleviate the entire fabric of your home so that it has nowhere to hide on any such level. And if you're not qualified to do this, you need to seek the assistance of someone within your region who is qualified, not just saying they're qualified. Get references from other people, because there's a lot of people who say, oh, I'll be your guy. And then they come and just piss it off. And then they leave because they can go home happy at the end of the night. What do they care? And then you're stuck with something that's even angrier. So please, I run into that all the time as someone who does clear and cleanse houses. Please don't just piss it off and then, or get someone that's going to piss it off and leave you stuck with it. Brian says, what happened what happens when a tantric initiate, I can't read right now. What happens when a tantric initiates people when they have no business doing it? What actually gets damaged?
Mhm. Well, first of all, if the person is not qualified to do initiation, it is not an initiation. However, it is a exchange of potentially harmful karma between that person and the person who is allegedly being initiated. Depending on who is doing the false passing on of knowledge or false passing on of initiatory ritual, if they themselves have not gone through proper purification, training, and been given permission to do so, then the karma can be altered in a way that the person falls sick physically, falls sick emotionally, or becomes prey to spiritual imbalances. Um, I've heard many occasions of people who were given spiritual initiations by people who did not have the formal or proper training to do so. And the person doing the initiating, we'll use that word loosely, was harboring unusual spirits or entities. And when the process occurred, then sometimes those entities shift either location, residency, or just their attention upon the person who's been interacting with this person. And if they're not aware of this, then they also don't have a proper remedy because they don't know what has happened. And they say in the demonology texts of Ayurveda, typically what happens with this type of spirit overlay or transfer, that the gunas of the body or the central channel, which is supposed to be sattvic, the sushumna channel in the center. We have the rajasic, the tamasic, the ida, the pingala, the upward going, the downward going energies, that a spirit can deliberately cause the center sushumna channel to lose its ability to sustain sattva, peacefulness, centeredness, effectively making that person's aura, spirit body, mind body weak, penetratable, and to be fed off of. And other times, if the initiation is quote unquote not authorized or done improperly, then sometimes people just go along their way and they're like, whatever. You won't see a profound shift. You won't see change that is sustainable and improving over a length of time. Ideally, with an initiation, you should see the person transforming, moving towards their higher self, moving towards self-realization, self-perfection. Sometimes that's, rocky and has changes, but the measurement is what happens over time. Do they have this really dramatic occurrence at the quote unquote initiation and then go right back to what they were doing and who they were? Maybe that's what they were going to do anyways. Or maybe it truly wasn't an initiation. Maybe it was just LARPing, live action role playing, and no actual transfer of energy, shakti, or practice occurred. So there's a lot of different things that can happen in that case. But again, do your homework on who's initiating you, who's their teacher, who's their teacher. Were they actually given permission to transmit these teachings, these initiations or rites of passage? How long have you known them? How many people have you seen come and go studying with them? And what was their outcome? Sometimes we're really quick to just want to gather these initiations, and that's
much.
nice. It's really ignorant to do. I've done it myself, and I suffered the consequence for it.
There's a lot of title collectors out there that's like, I belong to 75 lineages. And that's like, well, that's wonderful. What are you a master of any which one of them? Because it doesn't really help if you're not. And as we talk about in Kimbanda, Kayumbas, spirits that are siphoning off of you. They are, in all senses, demonic, but not in the same sense of demonology. These are parasitic entities who transfer from people who don't have that right type of power given to them, Brian. So as you ask in your question, what can happen? We know of someone within the Kimbanda circles that was given authority to be a priest, but then was cut off from his tata because of practices and says, you no longer belong to the root, you are cut. And there's a lot of things here, and he doesn't actually have the authority in a lot of ways to be doing all the things he's doing, but yet went on to initiate many other people. And with the practices that are going on there and how things were done, it became an infestation and breeding ground for Kuumbas and for these parasitic entities. And now all of the people that he started to initiate start to have mental disabilities, that start to have paranormal afflictions, and start to have all these things happening because it is a breeding ground. And yes, he kind of was given a right at one point in time to become a priest, but that was kind of stripped away from him. And you'll notice that there's a lot of people that self-proclaim, I am this. And as Dr. Smirl said, who is their teacher? And one of the things is if they shut you off from ever talking, such as this individual, to their tata or to their priest or to their priestess or guru, oh, no, you can't ever talk to them, or you have no way of contact. When they start putting up these roadblocks, so like you can't speak to anybody who can credit my credit, well, then there's a problem there, guys. Con men don't ever usually give you a trail. They usually try to make you believe so fully into their own story that you don't need to ever check with anybody. Because when you check, you start to notice, pinholes in their fabric here. Brian did say, thank you. It happened 25 years ago. I was actually the initiate. A ritual was involved and can relate to those imbalances. And I'm sure, Brian, I mean, if done improperly by someone who should have never had the right to ever do that, then that can cause imbalances in you. And there should be a level of energy exchange, as Dr. Smirl said, where a lot of times, especially like, for example, once again, I'll talk about what I know, which is Kimbanda. When the hands are put on you from your mentor, you should feel an energy exchange. It should be not only the power granted to them from their lineages, but it should be the spirits then working through your mentor into you, and you should feel that, and it should start to change your life. Like I said, it's not always comfortable, but you'll notice afterwards, not only should that have been a profound moment, but in the weeks and months to come, a lot of other things are going to happen because they're saying, okay, well, now you've received this degree of initiate. And now it's time we got to, once again, like I said earlier, shake the pot a little bit because there's some things that need tweaked. There's some things that need killed and removed. There's some things that need to be grown. And those things will start to happen. So, Brian, hopefully you found balance from that, since that experience. I'm sorry that happened to you. Caroline, I know you were saying something about you became very ill with health problems because of the spirit that's afflicting your home, and you had someone come to clear it and they became sick and ill with health problems. Yeah, you're dealing with something pretty nasty, and you need to find a professional that can truthfully. You, I think, said earlier you were in Belgium or something like that. I unfortunately just do not want to make it worse. Also, thanks for the sage tip. Did not know this. Yeah, I mean, sage is good for like very basic level. I want to clear the space within my temple just so that I have a calm place to sit. It's everybody thinks like, oh, I have objects flying off the walls and smashing. I have a poltergeist. I'm going to wave some white sage at it. That'll get rid of it. And it's like, yeah, that's not how it works. And I'm not making fun of you or anybody else. It's just a funny thing that I see a lot. You're welcome, Brian. Now, Natasha said you should feel energy, and so I was just saying that you should feel energy and the love coming from your spiritual mentor. Now, I wanted to ask a question here, a couple before we wrap up this episode, and I thank you once again so much for your time. You describe Kali as willing to induce possession-like states for purification. How do you distinguish sacred invasion from psychological destabilization?
Mm, mm. That is a very fine line. So some people say that the highest form of devotion is possession. First of all, a person has to be 100,000 times secure and positive with who they're actually working with. Because spirits, as we know, don't have IDs, they don't have passports, and they do lie. So, for instance, somebody who is doing a lot of channeling, or doing something basic like using a Ouija board, you don't know if the spirit is telling the truth or lying to you. So before anybody ever becomes willing to take on board a spirit, I recommend that they have worked with that deity, form of god or goddess, for a minimum of at least 3 years. Minimum. And to be able to have a track record of knowing what is this deity's temperament, what is their background, what is the natural course or outcome of working with this form of the divine or daemon, either one, and to go at it knowing that if you allow possession, so, in places like India, possession with your cherished Ishta Devata is considered an honor. But here in America and other places, even in India, many people do not have the proper praxis, the proper approach for it. And they just jump into it and then have permanent mental destabilization from it. Having had a personal history with possession as a child, I knew what it would feel like, and I was not willing to take certain steps until I knew I had a trained, bona fide teacher. You've had my Baba, my Tantric guru, on this show, Krishna Kalidas,
Yes.
Aghori, Jai Baba. And our goal is not to necessarily become possessed by the spirit, the deity, the deva, the form of divinity, but to become a willing vessel that is so purified that it's almost difficult to tell the person from their Ishta Devata. So my Guru Ma, she said that one of the highest things that I could do in my spiritual path was to become Kalima Swarupa, a living form, a living embodiment of my Ishta Devata, to study her means and ways so much that she just lives within your blood. Like when you put the alphabet on, you can feel it going in through the bony foramina and pulsing into your blood as you lay each shabda onto the body. As you're doing the rounds, you're not just speaking the rounds, you're drawing, you're invoking, you're creating space within your body for that Ishta Devata to live inside of you. So at what point is it invoking and becoming Swarupa, the actual form of your Ishta Devata, versus possession? And what is possession? So if it is a mouth, what's the term? I'm not using the word that I want, an evil spirit, let's say.
Like a malefic.
Malefic, there we go. If it's a malefic spirit, it's often going to take control of you. You're going to have retrograde amnesia. You're going to do things that are totally out of character. You may not remember the incident at all. You're probably going to look different, speak different, move different. But that can also happen with divine devotion. You can be just overcome by the spirit. I myself go into trance, but I know when I'm allowing that trance to occur. And sometimes it takes time to break that. But anytime you're going into bringing your Ishtadevata into your physical vessel, you need to be willing to have hours, days, weeks that may take a while to realign. But like I said, if you start with an Ishtadevata, a positive spirit, some people are more into other spirits. Kalima herself can be very wrathful. She's an Ugra Deva, so she's considered an angry form of divinity. And if you just sit down at your altar and you're like, Kalima, possess me.
Might not be good for you.
You might get trashed, just trashed. And it could take the rest of somebody's life to mentally recalibrate and stabilize from that, if ever. It could cause such a conscious shattering that they're never the same again. So even though they say possession can be the highest form of bhakti, the highest form of devotion, that also has to be done with respect.
Yes, it
And
does.
with levels of preparation, levels of purification, levels of familiarity. Show me a peek first. Ooh, oh, wow. Okay. All right. I can handle that. Show me a little bit more now. Okay. I can handle that. And not just to go for the big event. Because
the big event can be a mistake. As someone who has experienced possession in multiple different ways, including, as you said, more malefic or demonic, but intentionally, which ladies and gentlemen out there listening, I would never, and have told you before, I never suggest to do this, but within the coterie of Smirl, we do some working sometimes with the Klipoth, and we do invite some of those Klipothic beings to take skin, and it can be nightmarish. And some of the things that have come through and have taken me, has been witnessed by others, have been beyond anything most of you have ever seen. And it can take a certain type of person to be able to handle that, because it can have massive physical effects on you for quite some time, mental effects, spiritual effects. But it also depends on your practice and how you're building that. So you want to be very careful. And, Dr. Smirl was saying, taking it slowly and building that devotion. If it's going to be a deity, let's put aside what I just said about what else I do on a regular basis. You want to build that relationship, as we talked about, the child, the student, the lover. And you get to a point where, as you said, you embody the spirit. See, people oftentimes want to talk about perfecting the temple, their body. I want to sleep better. I want to drink better. I want to eat better. I want to live better. I want to meditate. I want to do all this. That's great. And they think of it in such a rudimentary way that I'm doing it just to enhance my cognitive powers. I'll enhance my spiritual powers. Yes, all of those things. But not only are you doing it so that you live better, you feel better. If you get to the level of that with your deities, it is to give them the divine ground within you to inhabit, so that you become as one. You are them, they are you. And as you heard me mention earlier with my spirits, let us build the bridge of alliance amongst one another. Let's connect, convene, converse, and commune. Let's become as one. As I rise, you rise. As you rise, I rise. Let's become as one. And you do that, is a beautiful thing. But it has not to be taken lightly. And one of the questions I was going to ask, which is kind of an interesting standpoint of it, is, let me pull it back up. My phone shut off here. I'm jumping between a couple of different screens. You warn of partial surrender, which leads to suffering. What does Kali do to those who hesitate at the threshold? Because it's okay to go slow, but don't ask for something and then be like, nope, I don't want it. I don't think you ever want to just shut it down midstream. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, It's like taking a ticket and getting off the bus in the hood. You're already in the hood. You might not be able to get back on the bus real quick and get out of there, and you may suffer the consequences. When working with spirits, I always say the first thing you do is you set a sankalpa, set your intention, say out loud what you really are intending to do, achieve, gain, etc. And you might want to actually write it on paper first and read it over and say, is this really what I want? And don't be in a rush. Don't be a yahoo. Because once we start working with very powerful forms of beings in the spirit world, once you call somebody powerful in, you don't ding dong ditch. You're not like, oh, just kidding.
Yep.
I'm just playing. No, never mind. They're going to be like this. I want a pound of flesh.
Yep.
Because you wasted my time. You called me in here. You prank called me. And there's always an exchange for prank calling spirits. So be very clear before you just start, oh, I'm going to invoke this and that, and I'm going to work with this spirit, and I'm going to chuck that back in a bottle of whiskey. Be smart. I was just reminded, I've been studying a beautiful Vedic sacred text called the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it states in there basically that the world we live in is only 1/4 material world and 3/4 anti-material world. And when we understand that we live in the realm of Mrityu Loka, the Loka or realm where we must die, and that all the others live in the anti-material world, once you rip a hole open with an invocation, an intention, calling out, an evocation, whichever direction you're going, and you open up that realm, you have to be ready. You can't just back away and be like, I was just playing. Psych. I was pretending.
A lot of people do, though, and that's where a lot of problems start right there.
Pure ignorance. And that's, part of learning. Being the student and saying, is this smart? Do I even know what I'm doing? Did I read one book on one weekend and now I'm the conjurer of spirits? Yeah, you just might be, actually. And they're going to come down and be like, yeah, you called. What do you want? There's a price to pay for calling me.
And I think that sometimes, depending upon what kind of spirit you're working with or actually calling by mistake, which happens a lot, they love the fact of ignorance because you're bringing them to a world and now they can wreak havoc that maybe they had a harder time getting into. They're only one level away, let's say, but they have a harder time. You're giving them the candlelight, the incense, the food, the wine, the drink to give them the energy exchange to pull them through. And you're an idiot and have no idea what you're doing. And then you pull them through and it's like, oh shit, it worked, like I said earlier. And then now you don't know what to do with it. And you're like, okay, you can go away now. And it's like, well, I'm not going to go away now. Thank you for bringing me here.
They've already been invited in.
Yeah, you invited me in. Congratulations. I'm
permission once, and then you feed them your pranic life energy. Now they've got a taste for you. And they're like, this is a delicious little human bundled up in a ball of idiocy.
And what happens a lot is unfortunately, especially when you're talking a lot of, and I knock my own kind all the time, but when you're talking about a lot of diabolists or you get into Satanism and things of that nature, you have a lot of folks that get so enamored by the ooky spooky of it that they don't think sensibly. So they're very novice in their practice, and it's like day 7 of their ever practicing, and they're like, all right, I'm going to call the spirit and I'm going to cut my hand and I'm going to give it blood, and I'm even going to offer some semen on its sigil, and I'm going to call it in. And I'm like, yeah, bro, I wouldn't suggest it. Oh no, I've heard it's powerful. I'm like, oh yeah, it'll be powerful. It'll be powerful, my friend.
It's just pure naivety.
Yeah.
Myself, I often giggle and I say, people say like, oh, how long have you been studying this stuff? I'm like, not very long, actually. I was like a bull in a china shop. I walked into the magic world because as a child, I was raised not by my mother. My mother's beautiful, beautiful soul, but my paternal side of the family had some, we'll say, left-hand leanings and occult leanings. And so I was exposed to it, but from the raw end of the deal. And as I grew, anything that was occult, I was like, oh, definitely no. Frightful, terrible. I don't want anything to do with it. I've already paid my pound of flesh. And once I got into my later years, late 30s, early 40s, and started trying to, unravel some of this, and then actually opened up occult books and started studying in a search for different answers for younger years in my life, I approached it with great reverence because I already knew exactly what could happen. I had already seen it in my younger years. So I was very careful. If you're going to utter an invocation, if you're going to utter a prayer to a spirit, you know what they say? Keep the names of the dead out of your mind and mouth, because the moment you conjure their name into your mind or spit it out of your mouth, that is their ticket in.
Well,
And
we are
just
the
something
conduits.
small. We are.
It's that small. So we like to think that it takes a large operation and so much work, and it can, in certain regards, to bring certain potency levels. But as you already mentioned, it's 3/4 other and then 1/4 materialization. We are, because of that 1/4, we are the conduit to bring forth the other 3/4. We might not realize, a lot of people don't enhance those abilities, but nonetheless, even if you don't, you still are a vessel that houses a spirit. And that vessel can house other spirits, as we talked about, or that vessel can bring forth other spirits out from around you, because we shape the world around us, Maya, as we talked about earlier. We shape it with our understandings, and as a collection of people together, we create this reality, being spirits and bodies. And as we do that, folks, we are very easily capable, whether we mean to or not, bring out something from the other 3/4. And some of them are beautiful, some of them are fine, some of them you can grow it. There is a selection of that 3/4 that can never be worked with in any type of positive way. And I have encountered some of these types of things before, that they are truly, truly vicious. And I know, Caroline, you left a lot of comments, and I don't know if I'll be able to get through them all. I will read them, though, later on for sure. You're experiencing something that's kind of malicious. And as terrifying as that can seem in a home setting, there are things much beyond that. There are true nightmarish beings that are beyond, like I said, most people's understanding. And you can let those out of Pandora's box, and you don't want to let them out of the box. So be very careful going about things the right way. Study, do it properly, take your time. We live in an age of on demand, and that is a disease to this world. That everything can happen at I can watch a whole series in one day. That shouldn't happen. It should be one episode a week. That's how it was meant to be. You should have to go to the video store to rent what you want to see, because you don't have any other way to get. We ruined our world by putting everything in our fingertips with the touch of a button, and now everyone expects that they can get that spiritual encounter, that growth, that initiation, that title at the click of a button or in 3 months. I've met people who have asked me for advice who were absolute novices, and then 7 months later were advertising themselves as megases of temples online and giving out spiritual advice and doing workings for people. But 7 months ago, you didn't know the most basic of basic things that you learned in Occult 101. So how is it that you become a guru? And unfortunately, there is a lot of that out there, guys. So this isn't to scare anybody. It's just as a warning that you have to do your due diligence and take your time. It means more when it takes longer. If you spend 5 years working on something and then you achieve it, I don't care what any of you say. Doesn't it feel better than if you were given it in 5 days or 5 weeks or 5 months? Yeah, you got that instant gratification, but then you threw it away because it meant nothing, because you got it so easily. But when you worked blood, tears, sweat through it all for 5 years and then you earn it, it actually was earned. And then it means something. So hopefully you guys will all take that.
And along that same train of thought, people don't want to do their basic rudiments.
Yep.
They don't want to learn the basics. When somebody comes to me and says, oh, I want to learn about the mother, I'll say, okay, well, let's learn the alphabet. They're like, the alphabet? And I'm like, yeah, alphabet. And that might take you 3 to 4 months even to perfect. And they're like, can't I just go straight into something more serious? I'm like, no, not at all. You have to start with your basics.
I think that breaks people, though, and that's a good thing. That right there siphons out who doesn't belong, though.
Yeah. If they're not willing to go to Ganesha first, they're like, oh, well, I want to go to Kali Ma first. I'll say, no, you have to go to Ganesha first. Even my Baba, the first thing he did, my first whole month's lesson was all Ganesha. I was like, oh, I thought I was going to learn about Kali Ma. But I already knew that Ganesha, you have to start there. So, spirituality, like you said, if they just want a quick fix, they can just go dig for a prize in the bottom of a Cracker Jack box instead. Because you're going to get hurt.
And they are. And I spoke about this before, that if we use, for example, like the Golden Dawn made every practitioner do the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram and hexagram every morning, every afternoon, and every evening for an entire year, if not more. And people would get weeded out by that because they're like, this sucks. Like, this isn't what I signed up for. No, it's exactly what you signed up for. You just didn't realize what you signed up for. And by doing that, not only is it strengthening your ethereal bodies and your elemental bodies, but you are learning discipline. You are learning how to structure things, and you're going about in a proper way, that those essentials are vital to your later practice. But if you just skip it because you want the glitz and glamour, you'll get the glitz and glamour without any know-how of how to protect yourself or to make things leave. And as we said earlier, you call something in, well, shit, I never took that class on how to get rid of it. But yeah, that probably would have been important. So please, folks out there, take that to heart. I have one last question. I could talk to you all night, but we just don't have the time, unfortunately. How does your tripraxis model protect practitioners from ego fragmentation during deep tantric work?
Mm-hmm. I would say, first of all, when people do tantric work, they need to understand what it is that they're doing, why they're doing it. And when they approach it from a tripraxis, the child, the student, the lover model, and when they've gone through those 3 incubation stages, then when something shifts in a way that is maybe distracting, disturbing, unsettling to them, they can gauge where they're at with the mother and say, okay, I'm a child. My mother is saying, hurry up, get ready, put your shoes on. You don't get to know where you're going. Just hop in the bus, we're leaving. When we've incubated ourselves properly in the student role and something unusual happens, something unsettling happens, or something great happens, we still can fall back, as we've discussed already, on those rudiments. I'm just going to continue doing my praxis. I'm going to continue doing my sadhana as I normally do. I'm not going to get distracted, and I'm not going to fall into the pit of some sort of mental disruption. The biggest thing, for me at least, with the mother, in going through those 3 stages of understanding the relationship. And like we said earlier, it's not like we go from child to student to ta-da, now we're at the higher level. We're all 3 of those at all times, because the mother wears many, many hats. And the mother comes to us in every life lesson, every life occurrence, every physical thing that happens with us, every mental thing that happens with us. The mother is everywhere. Omnipotent, omniscient. She is the primal source of everything. And so when we can fall back on our understanding of Ma, Chema, Chema, I'm a child, I come to you in innocence, guide me. That is an immediate comfort. If we're not able to go to the mother as that innocent child, we may never receive that comfort. If we are confused, suddenly things shift and we're like, oh no, now what do I do? Okay, I'm a student still. I understand what I'm supposed to do. Okay, get my alphabet going. E, ooh, ooh. Do my sadhana, do my rudiments, and stabilize in this time of shift and change. And then when all the juice starts coming out, all the rasa, the ojas, the amrit, the beauty starts coming out through life, that's when we really get to relish in being the lover of life, the lover of the results of what happened, but not getting carried away, still having that mutual respect and understanding. And to be able to move through those three realms with the mother fluidly, with ease, to just shift gears, first gear, second gear, third gear, brake, stop, steer right and left. And that just takes, as they say in yoga, Ishvara Pranadana, full surrender, surrendering to allowing her to drive your boat. And full surrender, as I've said before, can be rather alarming. So we have to be ready for it. Because where one person is today in their life, in their karmic design, in their setup, and their conditioning, once they go through the gates of the mother and surrender, they may find radical changes. I remember one time I was given a very formal secret practice by Baba, and it was for changing karma. And, I was warned very clearly before I started the practice, be prepared. Write down some things that you wish for, to see change and perfection in yourself. And I was like, Ma, I surrender completely. I did that practice, and that night I filed for divorce. That night, violence erupted in the house, and I was like this. That's it. It was so immediate and so radical. It was not amazing. It was expected from the mother, because the mother, especially in the form of Kali Ma, can bring radical, drastic change. And we have to really be ready. So, like I've said, kind of throughout this, be wise, know what form of the mother that you're approaching, whether you're approaching a more delicate form of the mother, a gentler form of the mother, or if you're just going straight in to the deep end, because things can happen permanently and very fast.
Absolutely.
And it's all just back on our course, because a lot of us are off course.
Yep. There always needs to be an adjustment. No matter how far along our path we are, there's always adjustments, folks. So don't be afraid of those adjustments. Embrace them and take it upon yourself to do it properly. Now, as we said, there will be a book coming out called Kali Gnosis. It is going to be quite beautiful, quite profound. So please make sure that all of you are keeping an eye out for it. And once it drops, please pick a copy of it up. Share this episode around. Hopefully you found some great tidbits of information and great conversation here. We enjoyed all of you listening in this evening and everything that you had to say. And we're going to go ahead and get ready to close out for the evening. So Dr. Smirl, thank you for sharing your wisdom, your insight, and your presence with us tonight. Your work stands at the crossroads of ancient spiritual science and modern healing, and it is a gift to all of us walking the path of transformation. To our listeners, may tonight's conversation remind you that healing is not passive. It is an act of power, of discipline, and of remembering what the body and the spirit once knew. Whether you walk the path of Ayurveda, yoga, tantra, or your own inner fire, may you continue to refine yourself with intention, with courage, and with clarity. From all of us here at Knights of the Nephilim, thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep walking the edge between the seen and the unseen. Good night, and Ave Noctis.